the 5 things couples always fight about are sex, money, time, parenting, and mess.
Mess meaning like tidying up?
Yeah, like
oh,
messy,
wow,
yeah.
really? That's it?
But really, what's really going on, Sebastian, what's really going on for couples is a much more intimate and deeper and older emotional experience around trust or support or a fear of being loved or a fear of not being loved. Sadness of, will I be supported here? There's such a rich emotional landscape that often drives the way we end up conveying messages through facial expressions and tone of voice, and also how we end up fighting about the story.
So welcome, Sean, on the show. So nice to have you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Good to be here.
Yeah. So you are a psychotherapist specializing in relationship for many years.
Yeah.
How did you get actually into it, and what do you do nowadays?
That's a great question. I think that before I want to start, I just want to do a privilege check because, we're 2 white heterosexual males.
That's it.
And I'm pretty sure that there's going to be pretty diverse, from what you've described, culture of people who might be listening into the podcast. And I'm just wanting to put out to all the listeners that, if I say something or miss you in some way because of your culture or your gender or your sexuality, certainly not an intention, but, I'm really, really clear that as a white heterosexual male, I'm privileged, and it's likely that you and I will be heteronormative and probably will say some things that might miss people out there. So, yeah, just really acknowledging that.
Oh, good on you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Thanks
important.
for doing that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so me, well, my background's quite interesting because I was in the police force for 12 years. And I left with undiagnosed PTSD. And it was a really difficult and complex time for me leaving the police. And, I was addicted to marijuana, I was in trauma. So, I had a lot of, I was very rigid, I was very closed up emotionally, and I was in a bit of trouble. So coming out of that and going on a self-love odyssey in some ways to discover more about my humanity and how I am as a man, and ultimately what it means to be in a functional and healthy relationship has been, I guess, my life journey and quest since that time. And one of the things that's been really significant for me in that is the recovery, what I'd kind of call post-traumatic growth rather than post-traumatic stress. I mean, it has and was very stressful. But I think that the strategies and the actions and the kind of connections with amazing thinkers and people around me has been really significant in my wellness. Yeah. So that's where I, at some stage in that journey, discovered through my own therapy, really, what was going on for me was that when I first moved up to this area from Sydney, where I was a police officer, I spent about 18 months, I landed on a permaculture farm, and that was really amazing experience for me, and I spent a lot of time aligning my chakras and doing the very Byron thing, and kind of getting in contact with, I guess, my relationship with God or a universal force or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And that was wonderful. It was a really profound and important experience. But what I noticed is that I was still terrible at relationships with women, and I realised, or I in my searching and my journeying and my work, I came across some great thinkers who talked a lot about this idea that Eastern philosophy is a wonderful way to make contact with the kind of universal divine, and Western psychology is a really great philosophy for being and understanding ourselves in relationship with another person. And so it was that time I really kind of endeavoured and dived into understanding myself through more of a Western psychology. And really that was a profoundly important journey for me in being better at kind of, I and another person, and opened me up then to actually wanting to train and study psychotherapy. And it was from that point really when I started the relationship I'm still in with my wife. We've been together for 17 years.
Oh, awesome.
Yep, indeed. And started to have a family that I really kind of refined my work into working with relationships.
So you got together with your wife after you had done all this work on yourself?
Yeah.
Is that, would you say there's one way that is easier than the other in terms of figuring yourselves out? Like, is it better to stay as an individual for a while outside of a relationship to sort out the relationship to yourself before you then bring someone else in? Or is there someone else sometimes actually a really good catalyst to then figure things out and bring new ideas and more fun, maybe, grounding in it and go that way?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think it can happen concurrently, but all of the stuff that I love about couples work and relationships generally is that all of the research, the modern research, contemporary research, talks about the fact that we learn about love from the outside in. And so we can do emotional maintenance happens in collaborative relationships with another person. So it's so significant when we think about those two ideas, that we learn about love from the outside in, and that we have emotional maintenance when we're doing it in collaboration with another person. So this idea that we're talking before with some of the staff here around cultures and communities that collaborate together, and I guess the lower rates of mental health compared to a contemporary Western culture where we've focused on individualism and the high rates of mental health from that. So more and more we're returning back to the idea that couples, if I just kind of keep it in that silo, but of course relationships can be much broader than that, are a profoundly important place for our wellness when we're doing it well. And all of the research shows that it's the best anti-aging vitamin. People live longer. People are less likely to have mental health problems when they're in a functional relationship. Yeah, so back to your question, I think it happens concurrently, because I do think that sometimes, one of the kind of indicators why relationships can struggle is that, I may not be taking seriously the kinds of issues that are in the relationship, or maybe I don't have the capacity or the resources to create the change that's needed to help the relationship to flourish. And I think when that's happening, it is important that people are doing the work on themselves, whether that's through talking therapies or whatever way you want to do it, really. There's lots of ways to learn about yourself. Yeah. But doing that work concurrently can really help a relationship to flourish and thrive.
Right, yeah.
Make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, cool.
And I think, everyone has seen or has had relationships and has observed, what's going on, and probably has their own theory of how how to go about it, and how to, I guess, grow up or become just that. When you're a teenager, you're quite is volatile, you go in all the different directions, explore all sorts of things, and then as you grow older and get into your 20s, there's much more continuity happening, and less interest of going in all the different directions, exploring everything within a relationship, with relationships in general, or just with life. And then eventually, in my mind anyway, I've observed that then people stick to each other, sometimes in a way that people think, I wonder why they're still together, this doesn't feel great. And other times, they found each other with 20 and they're still together. Is there any theory that would say you can make it work with anyone? It's really about working on the relationship. It's not so much what type of individual is together with another type of individual. It's actually the work that happens between them. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's lots of theories, but there's a couple that are particularly strong. And again, I just would want to emphasize what we're talking about is a classic kind of Western model of two people living together.
And I appreciate that culturally that might be different around the world. And look, one of the primary theories of, I'm going to cough, excuse me for a sec.
That's all right.
One of the primary theories of relationships is around attachment theory.
Okay.
Which has been around forever. It's John Bowlby kind of first talked about and did the research into attachment theory in the 1940s, after World War II, and looking at orphaned children. And Mary Ainsworth did very significant study into attachment theory in the 60s and 70s. And I'll come back and talk a bit about that if you'd like me to. But the other part around attachment theory, or the other part around kind of sustainable relationships that's really fundamental, this one sucks for lots of, if I'm being stereotypical, men, is that around emotions and the importance of emotions in how we build, I guess, a bridge to each other as a couple. So yeah, would you like me to talk a little bit about those?
Go for the emotions.
Go for the emotions? Okay, cool. Well, emotionally, I mean, I guess what we know about emotions, and this is Susan Johnson's term or phrase that I'm going to use, that emotions are a sharp, smart, intelligent force that basically organise and help us understand everything that's happening in our lives. We are taking on about 200,000 stimuli every microsecond, and when that comes into our brain, the thing that organises those stimulus that we're having is emotions. And so we do emotions first, and that is so significant because of how emotions are part of our survival. And they're a really important part of our parts of our brain that help us survive in the world, like the fight, flight, freeze systems of the brain. So emotions become incredibly significant when we realise that we're really hardwired as human beings to respond to emotions. I mean, you and I are eye-gazing at the moment, and we're watching each other's facial expressions. Yeah. And if there was something that I was doing or saying that didn't match what my face was conveying, you would rely on my facial expressions to make sense or to trust whether what I'm doing is, right for you, not necessarily the words. And the other important thing around that is tone of voice. So emotions are so important in how we build something like attachment theory talks about it in terms of security and safety. And so there's 6 primary emotions that are all about our survival. And the primary emotions are sadness, joy, anger, and I'll come back and talk about that because, there's all sorts of different kinds of anger, but I'll explain that in a tick. Disgust, which is linked with bitterness. So you can imagine when we were walking around in the wild, being nomadic, if we picked something up and it had a bitter taste, it would be a really important emotion for us to know, don't eat that. Surprise, you want that one when there's a big bear running at you. And fear. I think I did 6 there.
You did.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. And again, pretty important emotion, fear, for survival. So when you think about the fact that those 6 primary emotions make up our survival mechanisms and how we do ourselves as human beings, it's a massive part of why there's 7 billion of us on the planet, because we respond to each other's primary emotions. And we are super hardwired around caring for each other and looking out for each other in those. When we think about little ones, and if our children are showing us any of these primary emotions, if they're showing us fear, or they're showing us sadness, or they're showing us joy, we usually really want to get in there and either help them celebrate the experience or help them organise their feelings. So it's such a critical part. If you think about emotions and how it helps us organise our experience, how it helps us survive, and then we take that into the adult world, and that when we're able to share emotions in a functional relationship that helps couples build a bridge to each other, that's a deep space for intimacy. And I'll give you a really simple example. Partner A has left a towel on the floor partner B is losing their shit over it. Why haven't you picked that towel up? Yeah, and the other person, what do you mean? I picked it up. I only picked it up yesterday, and it wasn't me. Whatever, right? And so then couples can get into that kind of conflict cycle. Usually it's a defensive and criticism cycle. But really, what emotions can do there is when one partner has the resources or the capacity to be able to say, "Hey, listen, I'm hurt and I need support," and the other partner is able to say something like, "Yeah, I can feel kind of sad, and maybe there's a little bit of fear there around, a sense that they might be going to get attacked or whatever it is, right?" So the landscape being basically having an emotional conversation, then the towel becomes irrelevant. It's more about how two people then are able to meet each other with more intimacy in their differences. It's like, I have a difference around who picks the towel up. You have a difference around who picks the towel up. If we stay in the story of the towel, we're probably going to end up in disconnection. When we can find a way to talk about how we're feeling emotionally and build a competency as a couple, we're likely to have more intimacy, even in quite significant differences, because we're hardwired to respond to the emotional world of each other. Does that make sense?
What I hear you saying is that there are words, and you can talk a lot about words, and we will pick up on facial expression as well at the same time as tone of voice, and that gives us a more complete picture of what's happening. But then, to me, what you're saying is emotions is a really has a really strong push of what's really going on in that person. So it's a very loud language, or really true language that comes from that conveys so much more than what those three things that I just mentioned could bring about. So when you really connect to your emotions and bring that across, people get that's sort of like the shortcut rather than the scenic route that might not get anywhere if you just talk it all through and talk. But if you actually bring the emotions in it, then it cuts right to the chase where you actually want to go.
Yeah, look, I think that's a reasonable summary, and
thanks.
And let me help shape it a bit, because perhaps what I was saying was a bit all over the place, so forgive me. In context to what we do around emotions and relationships, what we're doing is constantly passing messages between each other through our facial expressions and our tone of voice, and we're making up what that meaning is. If, say, for instance, I'm scowling at you, which I'm not doing right now, you're likely to kind of interpret that as, this could be a little bit dangerous or something, and you're having an emotional response to that. And so in couples, when they're perhaps not using emotional language to help each other understand what they're feeling, the risk is that they rely on those facial expressions and the tone of voice to then make sense of, what they think is happening with their partner. Now, when we convey that into actual words, what tends to happen from that place is that we get caught in stories around the 5 things couples always fight about are sex, money, time, parenting, and mess.
Mess meaning like tidying up.
Yeah, like
mess, wow, really, that's it?
But really, what's really going on, Sebastian, what's really going on for couples is a much more intimate and deeper and older emotional experience around trust or support or a fear of being loved or a fear of not being loved, sadness of, will I be supported here? There's such a rich emotional landscape that often drives the way we end up conveying messages through facial expressions and tone of voice, and also how we end up fighting about the story of things that are happening in our lives. So functional and capable couples are really building a resource between them, so as individuals, but also between them, to convey a different narrative, which is about their emotional world. And when I use that example around the towel, you and I could fight forever around, who didn't plug the recording device in properly this morning, or we could talk about how we felt around what happened with that. And what that will do is activate parts of our brain that are very ancient, all about evolution, and that we are actually hardwired to care for each other when we're using particular emotional language. Just like when you think about your children and how you would respond to them when they're showing you some of those primary emotions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So such an important part for couples is then building a language, so a capacity to make sense of their internal world, and a language to be able to convey that. Now with couples, what's really tricky is that getting I know with my partner, what I do is I'm fast, I'm quite fiery and I'm fast. And, one of the really big journeys for couples is learning how to slow things down and to actually, take a breath and take some time to actually, reflect on what is it that I'm actually feeling here, and how is it that we can find a way to connect around that experience rather than disconnect around it. Yeah. So let me talk to you a bit about attachment and how they work together with emotions. Would that be...
Yeah, that would be great
to do?
Yes.
Cool. So attachment theory is... I really dig attachment theory because it's parallels basically what we know about neurobiology and how the brain works. And so that's why it's such an interesting and popular theory at the moment, even though it's been around for a long time. And in a nutshell, what happens in attachment theory is that when, say for instance, the parts of the brain that are all about our survival, they form from about 0 to 7 years old. And again, if you think about what your children show you when they're younger, they show you all of those survival things, including those emotions. They show you when they're tired, when they're hungry, when they're scared, when they are fearful, when they're joyful, when they're angry. So there's all those kind of primary emotions. They're great at showing you that. But if you ask them what tomorrow is, or next week, or what's a microphone, they're probably, unless they're particularly bright, they're unlikely to do that. They're all social constructs. They're all things that we've kind of create from that cortex part of our brain. So when we're really little like that, and say for instance the world feels dangerous in some way, what we want to do is we want to turn back to a caregiver, hopefully a parent, and we want that parent to care for us through facial expressions and tone of voice. That's the way we pass on threat, remember, in a way that helps this little person to organize their experience and rest their nervous system, and basically to have good neural wiring at that point. So the example might be a child who falls over and hurts themselves. The world feels dangerous. They turn back to a parent. Parent's got the right face on, and for all your listeners out there, I'm kind of trying to pull an accurate face here. And they are able to say to this child, "Oh, sweetie, do you need a cuddle?"
Yeah.
And that's going to help this child to relax their nervous system, to re-engage the parts of their brain that helps them feel safe and secure.
Yeah.
So when a parent's doing that lots, and I mean hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times, that's all about helping a child to feel safe and secure in the world. And that's called secure attachment. And lots of the population have that, about 60% of the population. What can happen though, I know this in my family, you might know it in yours, is that we also have the experience sometimes when we fall over and hurt ourselves and the world feels dangerous and we turn back, and I'm pulling a different face now, one that looks like angry. Yes. And we have a parent or a caregiver go, "Get up, big children don't cry." And then suddenly for that child, the experience is it's kind of dangerous in the world, and it's also dangerous when they turn back towards the parents. So it's kind of dangerous both ways. And so what happens for what we've all done is this fundamentally human behavior through an attachment lens. You've done it, I've done it, your kids are doing it, my kids have done it, all the people in the studio here have done it, is that we bend out of shape to deal with the fact that it's not safe for us when we turn back to, a caregiver or a parent. We do that because it's really hard when we're little. We might even be pre-verbal. Remember, we're talking 0 to 7 years old to go, "Hey guys, do you mind caring for me differently?" And of course the danger isn't always when we fall over, is it? Sometimes the danger is in families because mum and dad can't get their shit together. again, heteronormative, apologies. So, you know, like whatever that parent structure is, they can't get their shit together because they're like also dysregulated because their parents were dysregulated,
Yes.
whatever, right? So the danger's both ways. And that's when we bend out of shape to deal with the fact that our caregivers can't help us organize our emotions. And there's two things that happen under the research in attachment theory there, or two main ones anyway, is that some children, which is like my wife, they will learn to kind of get on their island and to sort things out themselves. They would rather move away from connection because it's safest for them to figure it out in their own way. That style is called avoidant attachment. And the other style, which is more like me, is that I tend to want to move closer in relationship. I want to talk about stuff. I want to, you know, because for me, there's an anxiety about not being connected. And so that end of the spectrum is anxious attachment style or preoccupied attachment style. So you kind of have three main styles. There is another one, but they don't often turn up in therapy. There's the three styles are kind of secure attachment style, avoidant attachment style, and anxious attachment style. Now, basically what happens in relationships is that in about 8 to 9 out of 10 couples I work with, that dance of one person being more anxious and one person being more avoidant turns up in the couples I'm working with. And what that looks like is that, if I use the example of my wife and I again, I'm kind of going, we need to talk about it, you know, we need to get closer, and so often I'm feeling not important enough. Yeah. And what the deep wound is, that little boy thing, is, you know, usually around some sort of rejection or abandonment. And then she's going, oh shit, this is pretty scary and dangerous. I want to get out of here. I want to like go and hang out on my island. So she's sort of going backwards because it's really scary to be invited into intimacy. And because what's happening for her is sometimes or often she's feeling criticized or like she never gets it right. And the deep old wound is often something around self-worth. So you can see when we're fighting about the towel, you know, I'm going, and you left that towel on the floor again. And she hears, you left that towel. And she just goes, oh, once again, I'm feeling criticized and like I never get it right. I'm out of here. And then her getting out of here thing is then activating my fear around what if she doesn't love me? And I'm going, oh, you're always doing this. And there's the you are always, you know. So that kind of dynamic is very typical where, you know, even when I'm being highly skillful and going, hey, sweetie, you know, it'd be wonderful if maybe you could just give me a hug. And it's the you bit where she can feel criticized. And like she might be going, I gave you a hug 2 days ago. Like, how many hugs do you need? Because for her, that's a massive step into the relationship, you know, because it's scary, right? So that dance turns up all the time. And of course it goes the other way. I'm talking more about, you know, the pursuing anxious person towards the avoidant withdrawing person. But of course it's a chicken and egg. It's, you know, relationships are co-created. The avoidant person, of course, when they're too far back, they're really co-creating that experience for the other partner where their anxiety's coming up. And so we as a couple need to work together. And Sebastian, here's the first test for you today in our interview. What's the world that's going to help us? What's the way that's going to help us to do that more?
Talk about emotions.
Talk about emotions. Dude!
Thanks.
All right, we nailed it here in the sauna. Yeah, talk about emotions, right? Because when we're able to talk about our feelings more, and, you know, if I can tell my partner, hey, I'm scared, you know, and she's able to say, yeah, look, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. We're suddenly creating a landscape to see each other without blame, you know, without criticism and defensiveness, which is the cycle that most often happens for couples in that withdrawal pursue. And we're able to actually start building intimacy to care for each other in something that hurts. You know, the basic humanity of like, you know, I care for you and I can see you're hurting. And then that takes all the story out then. Then we don't have to worry. Usually what happens is when couples are doing that, 9 times out of 10, I'm just going to pick the goddamn towel up because I don't care. Right? Because I'm seeing around the fact that, hey, I was hurting here or I needed support, you know. So it's more about the fact that I feel connected and cared for by you now, and I'm doing that for you, usually takes care of the story.
Right, at that moment you don't even worry about it anymore. So it's just an indicator, it's a trigger to push you towards actually talking about emotions. Then it is really a problem for you. If you are in the right space with your partner at that moment, you wouldn't even, you would just say, I love you so much, I picked this up for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Most times what happens is when we feel more of that connection and care, remember emotional maintenance happens in collaborative relationships. We're then able to create the kind of culture where some of those kind of 5 reasons we end up fighting take care of themselves. I mean, I know if I'm struggling as a father and in my parenting, and I can rely on my partner to understand what's going on, not to go, oh, well, just get over it, will you? Or toughen up, buttercup, or, you know, whatever. And she can really hear me. I mean, a lot of the time then the issues that I'm facing in my parenting field, they don't matter as much because I know she's got my back.
Right.
I'm interested, do you know what you and your partner do? Do you know who the withdrawing partner might be and who the kind of pursuing partner might be?
I've been thinking about that. I think Fee is certainly more the withdrawing one, but I don't know where I stand, because sometimes I feel I want to go be closer and get a reassurance, and sometimes like it feels easier to actually just go on the island. Yeah. So I know both mechanisms, and probably you were saying you sometimes go through that, you cycle through that, those 3 different types, and it feels like, that's probably what we do as well. You know,
I mean, lots of couples kind of, you know, end up having all sorts of different dances within their relationship. Yeah. I mean, back in the theory, it's kind of 8 out of 10 have a primary dance. And sometimes that happens, you know, couples go, well, there's sort of one thing that we do more often than the other. Yes. But when in the intimacy of a relationship, couples end up having lots of different cycles and dynamics. So what we're fundamentally describing here, when we're talking about that kind of avoidant and pursue dynamic through that attachment lens, is we're talking about couple cycles and dynamics. You know, when listeners hear, oh, you know, we've got a dance or we've got a couple cycle, that's usually what we're referring to. And yes, so couples end up doing a bit of all of them. And sometimes they have more of a primary one than another.
So when you think about, you know, that's great, you know, from a high level point of view, it looks like there's just 2 different issues. Either the partner doesn't want to be there, or the other partner wants the other one to be more there and more in it. Are there also just 2 recipes to fix that? 2 questions or 2 scenarios that you have to walk through? Like, are there 2 main levers or techniques that you would suggest to explore to bring that relationship into this healthy shape?
Yeah, it's a great question. That in a simplified way, there kind of is, but in a more complicated way, or in fact, perhaps a more frequent way, it takes longer and there's more levers to pull, because you know we're complex, we're humans, you know, and we feel a lot, and we have had lots of experiences, and sometimes pulling one lever might actually open up a box where there's a whole bunch more that either need to be pulled or need to be caressed in some ways. So the simple version is that knowing our cycles, like it's kind of like considering the meta-emotional world. Like if I know that you're more pursuing and that you can sometimes feel not important, and you know that sometimes I can feel like I need space, and that sometimes I can feel criticized or overwhelmed, then we have each other's owner's manual a bit. And we can keep our eye on the emotional world of each other, because sometimes rather than fighting about the towel, you might know that I might need a bit of space before we can talk about that. And you might say, hey, hun, look, you know, something's up for me. Can we talk later? Yeah. You know, and you might say, and I might say, hey, I really know that you need to talk about this and it's important to you. Let's do that. Or when I come back, I'm really keen to do that. So we have a different dialogue. I'm going to cough again, excuse me. Well done.
Thank you.
Good control of the desk. Yeah, we have a different dialogue then around setting up the landscape to create safety, like the attachment safety that we need. And that's a really powerful alchemy in relationships. So lots of the work I do with couples, particularly in the early sessions, is helping them build a language and an awareness around that kind of meta-emotional world that drives those cycles. And then the second part, the second lever that I would always pull is then building the emotional competence of the couple. So I think one of the things that's profoundly important, and this is where often other levers start coming up, is then helping people to really navigate and understand their own internal emotional world. Because when they're doing that, they start to then be able to find a language for that and express that. And, you know, stereotypically in a heterosexual relationship, and in Australia, where we're broadcasting from, that's men who can really struggle with that world, you know. They can really struggle with, you know, what are my emotions? How am I as an emotional feeling human? And how do I express that? And because, you know, so much of the masculine in Australian culture has been about suppression. You know, that's that classic big boys don't cry. And so for men in Australia, you know, learning that they're an emotional being and seeing the strength in that. Like, you know, I'll often say to men, it takes so much of the masculine traits around strength and courage and bravery, and I know women have that as well, right? But it just in a masculine sense, you know, the warrior, to actually go into, discover more about your emotions. Rather than it being weak to have emotions, you know, starting to help men to see that it takes courage and strength to have an emotional world is a really, really important experience for men. And so, yeah, in that heterosexual space in Australia, often supporting men to build emotional competency is a key piece of, is the key lever for them to pull in kind of supporting functional relationships that include emotions and the secure attachment stuff that we're talking about.
If you would rate a man just saying words about what they're frustrated about versus them actually having an emotion about what, you know, what they don't like, you know, what's the ratio of like the strengths of either of them? If you would give it a number. I'm pretty rational there, aren't I? But, you know, like, I just wonder whether you say that it's a word is like 1, an emotion is like as strong as 10 or 100 or something like that.
Yeah. You might have to frame that up in another way. I'm not quite sure.
I mean, like, you know, like, let's say the normal way for men to say in a relationship that they are unhappy or that they want to change or that something is up.
Yeah.
They would just...
They do frustration.
But, you know, if
they
shut down. But, you know, they might not actually go into really proper emotion, but instead just talking about it or murmuring or just sort of showing disinterest or just being a little bit disrespectful, whatever. I just think like...
Sounds like you know it well.
Yeah, sort of like hints and that type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then on the other side, if instead they would say, really angry about this or like just full blast being emotional in a moment. Yeah. One is not hurt, like the first one that I described is probably not hurt at all or is not really hitting home, whereas the second one would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple of really important things you mentioned and they're helping me to remember to shape up stuff that I've missed from before. So let me start back at the beginning, if you don't mind with this, and throw some theory at you. The bit that I didn't mention before is that we have these primary emotions and then we have secondary emotions. So secondary emotions are all the kind of emotions we build up around the primary ones to protect ourselves from them. Because remember that example I gave when we're really little and we hope that a caregiver helps us feel kind of well and safe and secure in our emotions. When they're not doing that, like, hey, big children don't cry, we have to learn a whole bunch of other emotions to kind of protect ourselves from it. So the classic example is that when we're feeling angry or frustrated, it's usually the flip side of sadness and fear. So often what's going on in those secondary emotional worlds, leading into the example that you spoke about, is that men, just keeping it in the male funnel, men might do secondary emotions around, I'm frustrated and I'm really pissed off or whatever. But underneath that is something where they feel afraid that maybe, who knows, maybe they won't be loved, maybe they're not going to get the support they need, maybe they won't be seen or understood, maybe they're going to feel dismissed by their partner. And so it's easier for them to either huff and puff about it, or to shut down and not say anything. And that's a very common presentation in my couples work, is that in a stereotypical way, men are actually using frustration as an expression of their fear and sadness, or they're using shutting down, not talking about anything as a way of, kind of protecting themselves from more vulnerable emotions. And what's so profound in this work is that when men can drop into that space, and I see it time and time and time and time again, is that when they do it, their partner always wants to reach out and just be there with them. It's such a beautiful experience to see the thing that they've most wanted, which is some sort of affirmation or care or looking after or being seen, happens in the emotional world. It doesn't happen in the, being a big bear and or shutting down. Yeah. Right. So, and of course, for men in Australia and perhaps around the world, this idea that having emotions is weak is such an old paradigm for me. I think one of the big levers in my work is supporting men to find more resources to express that. And so one of the ways that I will work with men is somatically, is actually getting them, I was working with a couple yesterday, I do an exercise where I support them to kind of use their bodies to create structures and shapes about what things are like when stuff's going down.
Oh, wow.
And amazing how that provides a whole different language for the partner, if I just go back to a generic sense, to the partner who perhaps doesn't like using many words around their feelings, because suddenly they've got their bodies as a resource and a tool to start showing their partner through different structures or different shapes that they've got stuff happening. And when we also as a team support, the couple support each other to know what structure or shape they like that helps them feel cared for, might be a particular touch or a way of being held, they've then also got more resources to look out for each other and do that secure attachment stuff. Again, not having to use words at all. So this couple that I'm thinking of, maybe I won't use them, I'll just use another example. One partner might be pulling their hair out, but what they really need is a hug. And so they can start using that as a resource where the partner could, hey honey, I've got this going on. And the other partner might go, yeah, you know what, right now I feel like I can hold you and I will. And that can just help dampen that whole conflict cycle with very few words being needed.
Wow.
So so helping that emotional world come through bodies and shapes and movement and breathing and eye gazing, it becomes then a very rich, I've used this word a bit, but a rich landscape for connection.
Yeah, right. So I guess, beside, I think, everyone should have a couple of sessions with you, and great, you do it online as well. So, you're not bound by the Byron Bay region to do that. And I think that's really good. All of these different tools that they would learn in such a session or in a few sessions are probably really powerful. But if you could name a few that are easy to grasp, what would there be? Just, let's think about whatever the partner's type is, whether it's the one that retracts, that's right, the avoiding one. If that one wants to somehow merge with its partner, that it's looking for something, is there a particular language for that? I remember I learned something years ago. I love you very much is sometimes something that I say before I say something that that might be seen as criticism.
Yeah.
But, you know, in my mind, it needs to be said or whatever. And it works so good. And it definitely works for me if someone says, like, look, I love you very much. Or this was really good work in this project.
Yeah. So you like the kind of acknowledgements and the words of affirmation really help for you, yeah?
It's a Trojan horse in a sense, in a really good way. It's just like, you know, I just put you in a emotional stable stage before I do something that is not meant to throw you off, but it could, because it is some sort of, it could be seen as criticism or whatever. Yep. Yeah. Do you have some of those tools or tricks?
Yeah. How many do you need?
Just a few that...
Alphabetical or chronological or... yeah, look, I think the main thing for couples is name your cycle. You know, like, know you've got a dance going on. Just know it, and start looking for it, and you'll know it because you'll feel it in your bodies, and you go, oh, we're doing that thing again where we end up, you know, fighting or disconnected. And actually naming it, you know, I have couples who, you know, call it roundabout, highway to hell, I don't know, bananas, whatever. Yeah. They just give it a name, and you can have some fun with that then. But the idea behind it really is just have a circuit breaker and stop doing it, because, you know, the research shows that about 93% couples will separate if they just get caught in those cycles and don't do anything about it. Now, it might be a long, slow burn, right? But you know, it's dangerous. So we want to support couples to pause and stop, and realize that they don't need to win there. This isn't about trying to win the story, the argument around the story. This is about humanity and finding a way to have someone that you can depend on when you've got emotions that are around. So naming the cycle and pausing it is number one. Number two is do something radical there. Like, there's 4 or 5 basic reflexes that help our brain feel safe. Okay. And you think about these when you think about your little ones, and what reflexes they need to survive. They need breathing. Yeah. And we know through Eastern philosophies and Western psychology that breathing's damn good for staying alive and also for settling your nervous system. We also know that touch is really important. And so if you can touch my finger, Sebastian and I are just touching fingers now. And what's the next thing that happened?
No talk in the mind, no chatter?
No chatter.
Oh, and looking at each other.
And we looked at each other, and we eye gazed, right? So touch is really important, and eye gazing is really important. And so I'm going to cough again, excuse me. Thank you. So touching and eye gazing and breathing are 3 really simple ways for couples to just come back into a sense of safety and connection with each other. Yeah. And so you're naming the cycle, you're pausing that thing that you do.
Just like, what would, if we would be in a relationship of some sort, like, you know, because I think
you are a very handsome man.
Thanks. So are you.
Thank you.
Honey voice as well. Love it. But, you know, relationship is anything that has a relationship. Like, I'm thinking also while you talk a lot about my business relationship, because we have cycles, but overall, like, we just know how to really manage our relationship well, and it's a very joyous relationship. And then with all, you know, all your friends, all of those are relationships to a different degree, of course, but like overall, what do you mean by a cycle exactly? Like, is it like, hey, the shit is going down? Is that sort of what you mean by cycle, or is it actually more specific and say, I see that I'm retract, and I see that you want more? Is that as specific as that?
Yeah, so definitely what the funnel I'm looking through is in intimate adult love relationships. And the reason is the emotional bids are higher in those relationships. Like in work relationships, we don't have to go to bed with, well, sometimes we do, but generally we don't have to go to bed with anyone. And you know, so we can walk away, or we can kind of bracket, or we play a role in the workplace, which is different to how we might want to be in our intimate adult love relationship. And so the emotional bids are higher. We're actually asking our partner, can you really see me and be with me, you know, and can I do that with you over, well, what we're asking for in Western culture is a long-term enduring time. You know, used to be till death do us part, but we live for a long time now. So just a long time, you know, like the enduring long-term relationship, whatever that ends up being. So the bids are different. And so the funnel I'm definitely looking into when I talk about couples cycles is the cycle around that avoidant and pursue dynamic, and those ideas around interrupting the cycle and using touch as a way of just kind of building some safe ground together, and then trying again. In other words, coming back to what they were talking about, but hopefully using more because they've settled their emotional worlds and had some good contact. They're able to then talk about whatever the issue is or the thing that they're hoping to resolve. And of course, my hope would be there that they're able to use more emotional language. So they're kind of three really simple, perhaps not simple, they're three important tools that couples can do straight away. There's a whole bunch of things that in the communication world, like communication strategies and, setting up good contracts around how couples talk and things like that. But, I think it all starts when couples get their head around actually realizing that they've got a dance going on and starting to do something about that. The fourth thing that I would suggest for couples is that they have some time out when they need it. It takes about 20 minutes to regulate yourself. I mean, for some people it can take longer, and usually that's because of a trauma history. But generally speaking, it takes about 20 minutes to just breathe and rest. So when sometimes maybe if we did that touch exercise again and it was just a bit too late, we'd already gone down the pathway of being in conflict or disconnection in some way. The advice I'd give is take 20 minutes out. Don't take that 20 minutes to then think about how you're going to come back and tell your partner what a dickhead they've been. Use that 20 minutes to really regulate, to think about how you've contributed, to think about how you're feeling. And then when you come back again, you'll have hopefully new information that will support you to connect and care for each other and look after each other's emotions, and then you can try and work out who should pick the towel up. So it's that idea of always coming back to looking after the emotional world and knowing that you've got your partner to be available and responsive and engaged and protective and caring for you, and then you'll figure out how to solve all the problems, I guess.
What I hear you saying as well is that you need space and time for maintaining a good relationship, and I think modern lifestyle, and that's what this podcast is really about. Like what are the tricks? What's the trick to have a healthy life? And it sounds like if you want to have a healthy relationship, which is the base of many people's life, it's so important. You actually have to give it that space. So I know my relationship, we have date nights. I've dates with myself as well, on top of that, which I also need. Yeah,
I've heard the music blaring when you're having those lovely nights by yourself.
There you go. Actually, you're right. And then, we also celebrate together with a lot of music, sometimes with the kids actually as well. But yes, exactly. And that's, I'm just realizing, because everyone is so busy. Yeah. And I'd include myself there. It's easy to take things for granted, to say, we do this next week and so on. And before you know it, it's, there's a lot of work to be done.
Heaps of work. And we don't want it to get that far, or if it is that far, obviously, again, becoming kind of very conscious around what we're doing as a couple's important. And there's two suggestions I have here. One is that even in a very busy life, prioritizing your relationship, even for 30 minutes, one night a week. If you can do 2 nights a week, good for you. If you can have a date night, you're on top shelf. You
don't mean watching a movie though, right?
I do not mean
what would you suggest to do in these 30 minutes?
There's so many things. I think I'm not the expert in my, the clients that I work with. I'm not the expert in their relationship. I've got some good theory. And so really it's up to them. But some common ideas or suggestions that couples tell me is that they might spend 30 minutes meditating together, or they might spend 30 minutes holding each other, or if they have a rich kind of sexual life, they might make love for 30 minutes. That'd be nice. They might make love. They might talk. They might use that 30 minutes to practice the toing and froing around all those ideas that we've talked about. Maybe they might use it as a way of, I have a couple that I've worked with who now spend time just talking about what they're noticing in their bodies. So just being able to go, yeah, as I sit with you, I notice my heart fluttering, just coming back to a very somatic experience together that has no blame or no story, just two human beings experiencing each other. But lots of couples also just put, great ideas like favorite holiday, best sex, what do you want to do for the next 20 years of your life, whatever, into a hat and pull out random subjects and just use that as the canvas for how they might spend that time together talking.
A game.
Yeah, like a game, right?
Yeah. That's cool.
But the point is about, like you said, Sebastian, it's the intent. And so really intentionally coming together into that space. And I think what that gives couples is it lets them realize that they don't have to aim for so many couples going, if only we could have the date night, if only we could have the weekend away. And, in our busy lives, and particularly parents of young children, it's really hard to do that. So just grabbing that 30 minutes one night a week is profoundly important. And the second thing I would suggest is building in those intentional contact points, with your partner, and mostly that's around transitions, like instead of, in a stereotypical heteronormative relationship where the male is at work and the female is at home with children perhaps, when one partner's leaving, that partner or both partners spending a bit of extra time in the transition before leaving, where they're eye gazing, where they're touching, where they're affirming the relationship, where they're affirming each other. It doesn't have to be 10 minutes, it could just be an extra 30 seconds. And same when you come home, just spending that extra time making that contact, how you wake up in the morning together, how you go to bed together or not, even if it's just that you're doing it at different times, it's still that transition. They're those sweet moments of affirming that I'm here, that I've got you, that I care, that I'm going to check in with you, that I'm interested, that I'm curious. They're the space for building novelty, for building adventure, for building more, we are sharing this experience right now and I'm going to turn up for you. And I love those, I love helping couples build those moments, because sometimes I think couples think they have to kind of do all this really, big, huge changes. And it's scary and hard because it might feel like they've got to change their whole life, and they don't. It's grabbing those small moments to turn up for each other that are really profound.
Yeah. Just to really hit home that importance of all the things that you've been saying.
Yeah.
What's the statistic of how many couples actually split up before they die, sort of thing, or within a time frame? Yeah. And what would you say is the most important thing? And I think you said it, but just to reaffirm it, what's the most important thing to do to avoid that if people want to stay in the relationship?
So the stats are still around about 50%. It has been a little while since I've had a look for first time long-term enduring relationships, and 75% for second marriages or long-term enduring relationships. So pretty high, pretty high level stats.
That's Australia, is it?
So yep.
Oh right, yeah.
And that's but for me, I think we live longer, and I think that's a really important thing. Is that till death do us part might have only been 10 years, 100 years ago. So I think there's a reason sometimes that we have those high divorce rates. However, I still think that culturally we're very driven towards wanting long-term enduring relationships, because they help us feel good and they help us to live longer, and have been around in our species for a long time. And so the key for me is recognizing the dance and absolutely understanding with your partner that you're co-creating this experience, and that when you have that understanding, you can start to build more emotional care and protection And those two things together are fundamental to the relationships that last a long time. Yeah.
Oh,
Does
cool.
that make sense?
Yeah.
I do want to say one thing that just came up for me, and apologies for not mentioning this earlier. All of this, and absolutely all of this, is not relevant in violence, where there's relationships in violence. And absolutely that is a gender issue. I mean, it's men who are causing violence in relationships. There's still dialogue that, women do that too, and, I just don't think so. I just think that this is a gender issue, and men, and this doesn't count, because men can hear this sometimes if they're using violence and strategies like that in relationship and go, well, you see, it's co-created. There's a reason I do this. You piss me off or whatever. And so this doesn't count for those kinds of relationships.
Hey, thanks for sharing that. I actually have three questions that I ask every guest.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. I feel like we could dive so much deeper. Hey,
Yeah,
it's a massive field, and it's so relatable because everyone is in a relationship in one way or another.
That's right.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's amazing stuff. Very powerful. Thanks for all the tips. Like, I certainly take that home. That's for sure.
So welcome.
Yeah.
I realise that I've spoken a lot, so I hope that hope for your listeners it's something that makes sense to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I prefer it that way because you are the one with the knowledge.
Thank you.
And I think you made it really relevant for the listeners as well. So it's great.
Cool. Great.
Last three questions that we ask. One is, what gets you up every morning out of bed? Like, what is it that drives you?
That's a great question. Sebastian, I just have a love of being alive in this fleshy body right now. I've done a lot of hard work on myself to understand how I want to be as a man in the world. And I think it's that excites me when I wake up and, connect either with myself or with my wife and my children, or get out into the world. We live in an incredible spot here, and getting down and having a surf, being in nature in some way. They're the kinds of things that really excite me. And so much of that has come through the work I've done on myself. And so I feel like that's the key for me, that helps me get up and feel like I just want to be alive and awake in the world.
Awesome. In the flow. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And right now, what is the one thing you're really interested in? Like, what at the moment are you focusing on, or I don't know, doing with it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've started a new venture this year. I've opened up a relationship clinic in the beautiful little township of Mullumbimby, and so that's taking up a lot of my focus, and that comes with a contrast of feeling very excited about what we're creating, and also feeling pretty overwhelmed with what we're creating, so a lot of my attention is going towards the clinic and the space we're creating, and the amazing people that we have working from there to support relationships right across the spectrum.
Cool. Yeah, exactly, right across the spectrum. And actually, we will work. Our team works with you as well, and I really love that that's happening, because I feel there's so much for business as well. It's not anything; it's a relationship. Yeah. So if people want to find you, and as I mentioned before, people can connect with you also online and have consultations online, which I mentioned I've done all my life, and they're absolutely great, and sometimes even better, because you can. There's more flexibility, You can travel and still have your check-in session with your counselor, with your therapist. Yeah. So how would people find you?
Well, the easiest way is just online, of course, and finding my website. So all the W's, Sean Tonnet, which is an interesting spelling, but I'm sure people will figure it out, .com.au for my website. And there's one for the practice as well, which is thriveclinic.com.au.
Oh, great name.
That's still under construction, but we'll be there in the next few weeks.
Brilliant.
So a couple of ways that you can really connect in with me.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for that.
Yeah.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
What's your take of why we exist and why we're here?
Oh my God. How long do you need?
I don't know. Might be a short answer.
Well, I think that, it's an amazing book by a guy called Brian Swime or Swim. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's SWIMME. It's a beautiful book, and it's called The Creative Journey of the Universe. And I feel like for me that sums up my philosophy around our existence, which is that we are, as a species, just part of that creative expression of the universe. And, what we're doing as a species is, however long we end up inhabiting this planet or not, is just actually helping that creative process, the expansion and the evolution and the journey of this incredible thing that we're existing in. That's been around for 14 billion years.
Decent time.
Yeah, right. And so I think at the deep core level, when I really tap into the existence of us in a much bigger playing field than just going to work and being on this little rock, that's what really resonates for me.
Yeah. Just out of interest, do you believe that your consciousness continues and just recycles into existence?
Yeah, I guess I just don't know. I mean, I think my ego really wants to believe that.
Yeah,
because when I tap into death, I fucking get so scared. Like just the idea of actually dying and going, oh my God, like what the hell happens? And when I tap into my faith and I tap into an existential experience, I have more calm and peace.
Yeah.
And I'd love to imagine that there's a part of me, because of my ego, that will exist beyond this, and there's a part of me that knows that whatever it is, it's returning to the mother, and I'll be okay. Or whatever it is will be okay. I'll be part of it. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on board.
Awesome. So cool to have you. I hope you come again.
Yeah, man, I'd love to.
Yeah, cool.
I can chat for hours.
No, I think there's so much value in it, and it's an area of health that people sometimes really overlook as being important for their well-being and their longevity and all of it.
Totally, man.
Yeah, cool. Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Cheers, bud. Yeah.